In my targeting experience, I have experienced considerable vehicular damage, efforts to tamper with my vehicle, my lug nuts, my tires, my brakes, my axle, anything they can think of to cause physical injury and or my death. And I've had repetitive repairs required of one vehicle, and my other vehicle was smashed so badly and cut up so badly that it was a complete loss. The damage was worth more than the value of the car. And in my other vehicle, I was in a public place in the middle of the day, and I came out of a business into the parking lot, and there was a man and a woman, one on each side of my front tires, on the ground with tools doing damage to my vehicle. And as soon as I approached the vehicle, they scurried away and sat in their vehicle and watched me while I called 911. And it was in a public setting, broad daylight. I'm sure there was cameras everywhere. And when law enforcement arrived, he went and spoke to the couple. They both had hot pink hair. They were very noticeable people committing this crime in the middle of the day. And then I saw the vehicle drive off, and the officer came back and said, "Yeah, they seem like nice people," and sent me on my way. He didn't look at the damage on my vehicle. He didn't assess what tools they had in their possession. And when I later called him with the mechanic's footage, video footage of the damage that had been done, the officer never returned my call. And then later, when I took this information to higher level law enforcement, along with many other incidents where my life had been attempted to be taken, documentation and footage and things like that, that agent declined receipt of any evidence. And so going through repetitive injustices, even after I explained to the first officer, hey, this vehicle, these people have been sitting outside of my house on multiple occasions, and I live 40 miles from here. So this vehicle has followed me here, tampered with my vehicle. I have evidence of damage, yet law enforcement is being non-responsive. And when you have gone through this experience, as many of you have, and had multiple injustice after injustice after injustice occur, you've got all these things happening in addition to the vandalism and the attempts on your life and the hacking and the surveillance and everything else that's going on. And law enforcement is not responsive, and you know that people in the community, people at church, people in your family are aware of what's going on, are either participating or turning a blind eye and just pretending and not having integrity or courage to speak up. It really can make you become embittered. It can make you feel pessimistic and jaded. It can cause you to have generalized attitudes about law enforcement or people that go to church on Sundays, that show up on Sunday and are engaging in these hateful vigilante justice acts as if they're above the law. And it can cause our hearts to become hardened. And I think it's so important to remember and to be intentional to keep our hearts soft, as difficult as that may be, to keep love and kindness and softness to our heart, despite all of the cruelty and injustice that's happening to us. And anger is a rightful emotion in these situations. The injustice is wrong, and you have every right to feel what you're feeling. But what they want, what the gang stalkers want, is for us to become embittered and volatile and aggressive and negative, because that's probably how they're trying to portray us. And if we become that, it fixes what they're saying in their narrative. It supports the narrative. And so when you're going through these storms and these injustices and so much unfairness, and nobody believes you and no one will help you, it can feel so hopeless and helpless and discouraging, and like, will this ever end? Will I ever receive justice? Why are people, attempting homicide just cruising around, because they look like nice people, and showing up at church and sitting in the pews next to other people's children on Sundays? It's kind of like, is this real life? And when you've experienced that level of injustice as a targeted individual, you see a side of humanity that most people don't see. that most people shouldn't see, a darkness, a cruelty, the injustices of this world. And that bitterness can overtake. And I often see others who've been through gang stalking situations. You can tell by the way they comment on certain posts or videos that that negativity, that experience has hardened them and made them very pessimistic and kind of volatile and angsty in the way they communicate, in the way they carry themselves. And that's not going to be helpful in the situation. How we present, how we communicate, how we carry ourselves in a kind and loving and soft way is really important to maintain that and to not let those targeting us take away from our goodness, to make us become what they're trying to make us look like, which is their goal. And being intentional about doing things that make us feel happy and at peace and getting back to the basics. I remember as a kid, the excitement of, finding the toy at the bottom of a cereal box, or when you'd go to TCBY yogurt and order a waffle cone, it wasn't so much about eating the, frozen yogurt. It was about what color jelly bean would be at the bottom of that waffle cone. Those small and simple joys will help keep us soft in our hearts through such hard experiences. I know the first thing I do every morning when I wake up before I even sit up is thank God I was safe through the night. God saw fit for me to awake another day with an able and capable body, and I was protected, and I'm blessed. And looking at those small little blessings, every time you step outside and hear a bird or smell the fresh air, thanking God for it as you walk, praying as you walk, keeping prayer constantly going through your mind and in your heart is such a good way to keep yourself softened amongst such hardened circumstances. Helping others, loving others, being kind and doing good for others is another way. And it's the goal to isolate us, to make us feel afraid and skeptical of all other people, that we don't want to get close to anyone. But there are other people going through hard and isolating situations just like us that we can help and serve and uplift to help uplift ourselves. I find if you're near the ocean, go sit by the water and just listen to the waves and let the rhythm of the water balance you and ground you. I love to go volunteer at the animal shelter when I'm having a hard time. Can I come and play with the puppies for an hour? Does wonders for the soul. There was one point where I was really feeling discouraged and felt, if I could just ride a horse in nature for a little bit, that would make me feel better. And it was really expensive. So in those situations, get creative. I asked somebody, can I come clean out the stable in exchange for some time to ride the horse? And I found somebody agreeable to that. And it was so healing to do that, exercise and using our body to move through the pain, to move through the anger and let it move through us. Good music, doing things that will make us feel a moment of happiness, a moment of peace, a moment of love in our hearts to uplift us will help us carry us through these situations, because we don't know when the end will come or how long it will last or if and when justice is going to come. But we can't put our life on pause and just be angry about it and volatile about it and complain about it. We have to keep pressing on. Otherwise, it will overtake our life. We'll lose time in our life, and they'll achieve what they're trying to achieve and take from us. And so I'd just be curious, what have you found to be helpful to make you feel a moment of peace or a moment of happiness? What activities or things do you do? Do you work in a garden or grow flowers or go for a walk or sing or dance or paint something, do a craft? What is it that makes you feel a moment of happiness in spite of the horrible things happening that are unjust and unfair, that should consume you, that should make you feel overwhelmed in anger and injustice? But what do you do to choose to still have progression in your life, feel joy, and to press on?